Today we're going to go through SDR Console. We're going to go through the downloading, the installation, and the configuring of this software. It looks complicated here, but it's actually very straightforward, and it is a very, very powerful piece of software. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come over to sdr-radio.com. This is the website which hosts SDR Console, which is the software. It's all about the software. Now, in my previous video that I did a few days ago, a lot of you will have noticed that there is a lot of advertising on this website. So it was a little bit confusing for some to try and find the downloads button. So what I'm going to do is show you exactly where that is right now. It is a Windows only software. That's the other thing to also point out. There is no Mac version, there's no Linux version. But if you head over here to Home, here at the top left, scroll down to Download and click on that, then this will load up the main downloads page. Now, if we scroll past all of these download buttons here, the main bit that you're looking for is this 3.3. You'll see 3.3. There's all these download buttons. Ignore all of this. What you are looking for is these links right here. There is a 32-bit version and also a 64-bit version for Windows. And you can download this from Microsoft, from OneDrive link. There is a Dropbox link, and there is also a web host link as well. So as far as the downloads are concerned, that is where this is what you are looking for. Now, you can scroll down a little bit further. You will find older versions of SDR Console. So here's version 3.2. They also come here with release notes, so you can click on the release notes to see the differences between these versions. And here's a little bit of a overview of what 3.3 comes with. And you'll also see too that there is a beta 3.4 version as well that you can find. But the main thing that you're looking for here is the Microsoft Dropbox web hosting links. These are the ones that you want to download SDR Console. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Microsoft 64-bit. I'm not logged in or anything like that. You don't need to be logged in to download. Here you'll get the direct download to the executable of SDR Console. So just go ahead and click download, save it somewhere, and then once that is downloaded, we're going to run that. So once you run the download, you can go through the installation process. So we'll just hit next here. We've got the license agreement, I agree. You can choose these options here, which I've just left them all as default. Just hit next. Install for anyone using this computer. It's literally, this is just a next install. And once we're done, we're ready to start the software. Now, when you boot it up for the very first time, it's going to look a little bit like this. It's going to ask you for some radio definitions because we haven't added anything in to configure any of our SDRs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my little AirSpy here, and we're going to use that for our radio definitions for this demo. So all I've done is just plug that into my USB. I go into here into definitions, and we can see there that we've got nothing listed here. So what we want to do is we want to go to search and search for our SDR. Now there's a whole bunch of different ones here that are supported. There's some more documentation online that you can go and Google and find out if there's anything additional that you need for your SDR. I've tested the AirSpy, as I said, the RTL and the SDR Play, and they've all been supported here and really easy to get going. So if we go AirSpy and then I go AirSpy R1, R2 Mini, I click on that. It says one device found. I haven't installed any drivers or anything like that. I've literally just plugged it in. That's all I've done. I just go add, and we can see here that it is now added with the serial, the address, and all of the information that we need in here. Now we can go into the edit menu, and there are a couple of different settings in here, which I'm going to go into a little bit later on, but you can see here that there is a frequency range that is supported. This will be the frequency range that you can tune to in the software. As you can see here, it's a little bit different than the frequency range that the software, that the hardware actually supports. So if we go back in, you can see it's got 0 to 1800. So we can tune down lower than the accepted 24 megahertz here. So it might be a good idea to go in here and just change that range to maybe 20 or whatever you are intending to tune, so that if for some reason you're down in HF and you're not quite sure or forget what your frequency range of your SDR is, then you understand why it's not working. But anyway, now that's added, all we need to do is click save, and then we can click back here. This is our radio that's been selected. Now we've got bandwidths. These are the bandwidths that are available on the AirSpy Mini. So this is the maximum bandwidth that you can see in one chunk of spectrum using the SDR that you've got. This will vary from SDR to SDR. So in this one, I can select up to 6 megahertz. So I can have multiple receivers within a 6 megahertz portion. So what we're going to do is let's just let's start off with 6 megahertz, and we'll click start. Now obviously this is now defaulted to 7 megahertz, which is not going to work because that's outside our frequency tuning range, and I also don't have an antenna connected. So what we're going to do is we're going to just tune this up a little bit to the FM broadcast portion of the band, because that's going to be the easiest way to demo this. And I'm going to connect an antenna, and we'll go through some of the different gain settings and all the different software switches that you need to turn on and off to make this work for you. All right, so what I've done is I have connected my antenna, and you can see here that we've got some activity. We've got some broadcast activity going on at the moment. So the first thing that I'm going to do is show you here on the left. This is where you can choose your frequency range. So let's just go 100.9. That is a local FM radio station here. We've got a signal strength meter, which tells us the signal of the station. And at the moment, by default, it's in dBm, but don't worry about that. We can change all of this later on. We've got an IF display here on the left as well, so we could see what's happening in the IF. We've got some other displays happening, but everything is all a bit basic at the moment. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to go in and we want to change our gain settings. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can go about doing this, depending on if you've got test equipment or no test equipment. Down here on the left-hand side, you'll see that we've got gain. We've got linear gain and we've got sensitive gain. Now, for most cases, if you're just receiving just basic stations, linear gain is going to be perfectly fine. Now, if we up or back this off, you can see here we've got a master gain setting here, we've got an LNA setting, we've got a mixer setting, we've got a VGA setting. All of this can be a little bit confusing. So the easiest way of what we need to do is we want to be able to set the gain enough so that we get enough signal coming into the SDR without wiping it out completely with noise. So for instance, if I turn up the gain all the way up here, you can see here that in this middle portion where we don't have any signals, because there's an FM station here on 100.9. Let me center this so that it's a little bit easier to see. So we've got an FM station here. We've got no other stations out off to the side here at all. If we widen our span a little bit, which I'll do just quickly so that you can see, we do have another couple of stations here off to the side. But what we want to do is we've got too much noise here. We don't need that much noise. So what we want to do is we want to just back off the gains a little bit until, as you can see there, our signal is still the same. It's maintaining the same signal strength, and we're good there. In actual fact, I don't think that was actually a legitimate signal. I think that was actually a image of the other signals, but these two are definitely signals. So we can see there that I've now reduced it to 13. If I just go back up to 19 just to demonstrate it, you can see there that our peak is sitting at about minus 60 or something like that. If I actually back off the gain a little bit more, you can see there that it doesn't really drop down all that much, but the noise does definitely drop down. And if we keep going down there, we will go too far eventually and our signal starts to really drop away. So what we want to do is we want to sort of fiddle around with this a little bit so that our noise levels are down, but our signal is still up. And it's going to take a little bit of trial and error and a little bit of playing around with these settings to be able to get this to work for you. Now, I've done this with an FM radio station, obviously, but the easiest way to do this, at least on the ham bands, is to use a beacon. a beacon is a good way, a Morse code beacon with a carrier, or maybe you've got a friend who can transmit some signal to you so that you can pick up on that signal. I've got test equipment here, so I've been doing that using my signal generator. I inject a signal in while the antenna's connected, and I adjust my gains and stuff. Because what happens is if we have way too much gain, we end up, as you can see there, creating an intermodulation product, and we'll get interference and it just won't work as well. So don't turn up your gain all the way. I've got an external amplifier running here at the moment as well, which helps with being able to improve the performance of my SDR. But out of the box, just being plugged in, you will probably need to just experiment a little bit around to try and get this to work. Now, that's the actual RF gains, these ones here. Now, depending on what version of SDR you have, your gains may appear down here on the left, or they may appear up here in the top bar. And I'll put a screenshot of what that looks like. Essentially, they're the same thing. It's just they're placed differently here in the software, depending on what you're actually going to be plugging in, what SDR you're going to be using. Visual gain does not affect RF whatsoever. This is just purely what you see here on the waterfall. Now, as you can see, as I turn that up, that's going to turn up my waterfall gain, and it's going to affect what my signal actually looks like. So I usually set this relatively low, and we adjust our waterfall again accordingly as we want. Moving down, we've got AGC, so we can select our AGC, whether we want it off, fast, medium, or slow. You can also select this little sliders button here, and this will allow you to adjust all of the thresholds and everything else for your AGC if you want to go off and change that as well. We've also got a couple of other functions down here too. We've got CW, peak enable, which we can turn on and off. I haven't played with. There is a noise blanker, but I'm going to go into that in more detail shortly. We've got noise reductions here, which are preset levels that you can select with your different noise reduction filters. There is a notch filter, which you can turn on or off, and there's also squelch available here for FM or AM SSB if you want to be listening to a signal, but you only want it to activate past a certain threshold. Okay, so what I've now done is I've shifted back to another SDR console instance that I've got, because this is a little bit more customizable, or what I've customized, and I want to go into what I've done here compared to from the AirSpy. Now, this is using my RSP1A, which is an SDR Play device. Now, if we go in here, you can select on the left-hand side the mode. Here, now I'm on 6 meters at the moment, so on my first receiver here, I've got it sitting on 6 meters USB. And then I've also got some filters here as well. So you can select all the different filter widths that you want. You can also go into click on these 3 dots. So in mode, you've got a couple more modes here listed by clicking on those 3 dots. Under filter, if you click on 3 dots, then you can go in here and you can select your filters. You can also create new filters. So I've created a WSJTX filter here, and you can go in and edit that, change the low and the highs and the windowing and all sorts of stuff. It's very, very customizable. Now, you'll notice here that on my waterfall, I've got some different colors available here. You can go in and adjust these up and down depending on what the threshold of signal is. If you go into view and go to color, these are the colors that I'm currently using. So I'm using Spectra View at the moment. You can select other waterfall colors as well. You've got Plasma. What was that? You've got Viridis, Inferno. So you can select all of these different colors for your waterfall, but the one that I mainly use is Spectra View. You can go in here and then you can also set your threshold. So at the moment, any signal that is more than -100, so this is in dBm as well. So obviously it can get a little bit confusing because I've got S meter here and I've got dBm here, but you'll get used to those as you play around. So I can then now adjust my waterfall looking for really weak signals between minus 120, which is basically my noise floor, and minus 100, which is the signals. And you can see those, here's a couple of greens, so they're minus 110 at the moment, and you can see them popping up on the waterfall. There's some, I think these are little interfering signals, but you can see we're looking very, very much right down into the noise to try and find these signals. Now, this is just all a visual thing. As I go back, you'll remember that I mentioned about visual gain. The SDR Play here puts the RF gains up in here. So we've got RF gain, I've got that maxed out. IF gain is set to minus 20, and we've also got visual gain right down at minus 40. Under view, this is where most of the stuff is that you can actually see here and adjust. And the first thing that I'll mention was the S meter. If you click on signal meter in here, you can select whether you want an analog, you want a digital meter, or you want no meter at all. You can also select the units that you want. So you can either have here the signal to noise ratio, you can have dBm, you can have S units. So at the moment I've got S units, which is set as my default, and you can adjust the size of your S meter, what it sort of looks like, whether you want the vintage or the dark or the light, or there's all sorts of different customization, and just go through and just sort of play around to how you want this to look. Now, a lot of people will say about this S meter, it's not entirely accurate. You need to be able to set this as part of your gain process as well when you adjust and set up for the first time. So I know that roughly my noise floor on 6 meters using my normal radio is around about S1 to S2. Now, if I go and just crank up my visual gain, you'll see all of a sudden it's saying it's S9 plus 15 and everything's all in pink. Now that's fine. I can adjust this right out so that any signal, that's actually probably a bad example. Let's just crank it down a little bit so that I can demonstrate this. Let's go down to minus 10, right? So now I can adjust my waterfall so that I can see my signals. That's all fine. There we go. But you'll notice that I'm not seeing as many signals anymore. I'm only seeing all of these strong ones that are more than minus 100, and my S meter is showing at S7. I'm not getting that kind of noise. This is all of a visual thing. So what I've done is I've just turned down my visual gain all the way down, and then I adjust how I want my signals to appear. So I want to see some reasonably weak signals, and anything strong there is going to be, shown in red or green. And my S meter is back to S2. Now, if you find that you go and you adjust your visual gain down, you adjust all of your RF gains and everything that's all works and looks perfect, but your S meter is still high, you can go in and just stop your radio and go in and select your radio again in definitions and go back into here and click edit on your SDR. So there's mine, SDR RSP1A. And you can adjust your gain. So you'll see here that at the moment mine's set to minus 10. This is not the gain of the device. And it's a little bit confusing because many people think, oh, if I crank this right up, that's going to increase the gain of my device. It doesn't. It says here in the radio definitions that this is a visual gain. The default gain logic is 0. However, if you want to see or reduce or increase it, then you can do so here. So I've just backed mine off to minus 10. I could probably go a little bit further. I could probably go to minus 15. And I haven't changed anything else. And if I hit start again, there we go. My S meter has now dropped back. It's showing S1. That's probably more likely what my noise floor is like. And I can drop this right back now. And this gives me a better representation of what I'm looking at. And then if signals do come up, then it's more likely that they're going to be at a more of a real S meter, if that makes sense at all. Now, what about actual receivers? So you can see here that I've got 3 receivers at the moment. I've got one receiver here, which is on 50.313. If I actually hover over this second receiver here, I've got the ability to select, mute, lock, or close the receiver. If I if I click select, now I'm on this second receiver, which is 50.293, which is Whisper, which I'm listening to on 6 meters. And then I've also got a third receiver here. And if I just move myself out of the way, I can hover over myself and I can click select, and I can select this receiver, which is receiving SSB on 50.110. And all of these are really zoomed in, so I can go up here and I can mute that. So that's basically coming through my speakers at the moment, so I can listen to SSB. I can, with this selected receiver, go over to here on the on the left-hand side. I can zoom in and out. So there we go. On my receivers, I can zoom right in or right out, depending on what I want to look at. You can go in here and you can change all of your receiver bars, the heights, the zooms, all sorts of stuff that you might want to customize. You can add extra receivers by clicking on the plus button here. So that just adds in another receiver with the random frequency and the defaults within the passband that you're listening to. So that's defaulted to USB. I can select here on the left, narrow FM. And of course, we're going to have some squelch. So let's just turn that up. There we go. And then I can select that receiver to be on, say, my repeater frequency, which is 53.700. Or I can go back to some of my other receivers here. Now, I think that this might actually be just outside the bandwidth because I've got 4 megahertz, so I might need to just increase to 10 megahertz. The whole 6 meter band, I've got here my FT8, my Whisper, I've got my SSB, and I've got FM all sitting here in the one. Now, I can have up to 24 receivers. If we actually go into the Receive tab here at the top and click on Matrix, Receiver Matrix, this is where it gets really interesting. That's just opened up on another window. So you can drag this around. And this has got all of my receivers, and I've got here at the moment a window for 4x3. So I've got 4 receivers here at the top. I can add extra ones here if I want to. If I select my matrix, this is where I can select my appearance. So rather than having a 4x3, I could have just 5 across here. That changes the look of my S meters. I can just do 4 across the bottom here like that, and then that sort of shows a much wider view. Or I can just I could basically go all the way up to 24 receivers like that in my matrix, and it makes it really, really easy to see all sorts of signals that are going on all of the bands. So that is very powerful, the signal matrix box. Most of the time I am running here in the normal SDR console screen, but you might want the matrix if you're looking for multiple different signals on the band, depending on how many receivers you've actually got. Another thing you might be doing is you might be, say, tuning around here on one receiver and you're going along, just looking along on the band, or you might be down here just tuning along. One thing that you might want to do is you might want to lock off your other receivers so that they don't adjust or change. So if you go in here and you lock off your receivers, as you can see there, that one was unlocked. It's now been selected. It's still on the frequency, but as I adjust the frequency or try to adjust the frequency here on the waterfall, it actually doesn't work. And the reason for that is very good, because we don't want to change from our default frequency, which is sitting in the background on WSJTX. So you can simply go and unlock that, and then you can go and you can tune around. Now, the thing is, when you do that though, it does not change the ability to use the frequency dial here to adjust frequency. So that is just another thing to keep in mind when you are adjusting your frequencies about. Up here in the top right hand corner, you've got noise blanker. If we go into options here, you can enable this and our blanking starts here. And there's a little bit of a description here about everything that this does. But basically this will look for short noise pulses or impulse noise, which it will try and blank for you. Now you can increase this number and you'll see that the blanking will start to decrease, or you can decrease the threshold to increase the blanking. Now you got to be careful and not go too far, because obviously there we go, we've just blanked our entire signal because it's sitting at 90%. But you can experiment a little bit with this if you're getting wideband noise then you can try to reduce some of that down. So at the moment here, it's reasonably quiet. These are just birdies and carriers that I've got here that I'm receiving around the neighborhood. But at the moment, I've just got a little bit of blanking there. If I turn that off, you can see there's a little bit of a difference. We probably need just a little bit more. There we go, set it about 30%. I don't really have a lot of noise here, but you can see there we go. It's reduced that down a little bit. So you can play around with that. That's a very powerful feature, but you also too need to be very careful with it that it doesn't remove your entire signal completely as well. Just a couple of other features to also go through that I haven't played around with, but I know that they do exist in the program, is you can record signal histories as well, which is really good for those who are using MSK 144 meteor scatter. You can basically get it to record in real time your signals, and then you can play them back. So I think that's under the record playback here, and you've got the ability to do that. I haven't done that yet on mine. You can also go back into, I think it's in view and signal history. So once you do that, it will show you the last little while for signal history. So which is, I think, linked to the recording as well. Or there we go. You can click enable, and you can view the last, what's that? Depending on how far we go out with this duration. So if you're looking for pings or you're looking for signals that appear and then they disappear, you can use that as well, which is another handy tool. And I mentioned in the previous video in this series of SDR stuff that you've got the ability to output to multiple audio outputs. So here on the left-hand side, I've got a virtual audio cable installed. There's 8 line outputs that I've done for various digital outputs to WSJTX. I can also send it to some of my speakers. So I've got here my speaker headphones in my PC, or if you've got some external speakers, you can select those as well. There's all sorts of different things in here. You can go to an equalizer and you can change it so that it sounds a lot better. There's all sorts of stuff here. You can adjust the audio level slider as well. There's the audio spectrum. So if you're listening to a signal and you want to see what it actually looks like as far as the audio waveform's concerned, you can also look at it there. So you can select through the various different, or toggle through those. The next video that we're going to do is using the SDR switch. This complements your transceiver and allows you to add an SDR to it so that you can do everything that I've just shown you through your main antenna system while still having your transceiver connected. We're going to do isolation and we're going to do insertion loss measurements on this because they're very important and the single most important measurements that you can make when looking for an SDR switch. We're also going to do in future videos do some comparisons between different SDRs. We're going to see how the SDR compares to the transceivers as far as reception is concerned. There's a whole bunch of different series of videos that are coming. So if you want to catch up with those, then the playlist is in the description below, or subscribe to my channel and I will release these slowly over time. But for now, let me know how you go with SDR Console below, if what SDRs you're using as well, and I'll see you in the next video.